Hello, everybody. This is Luann Morris, and I'm here with Deborah Colleen Rose, and she is recording her audio biography. And today we're going to talk about her marriages.
Luann, Luann,
Yes.
it's Colleen.
Oh, I'm sorry, Colleen. What did I say?
Colleen.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Deborah Colleen.
Yeah, it's
Rose.
the Irish Southern version. So are we gonna like break this down like an episode per marriage since there's so many?
Well, it depends. How long do you want to talk?
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't matter. They can be short episodes. It seems like it might be easier for me to focus on one at a time, you
Okay,
know, not worrying about
one,
transition.
one at a time.
Like my house. Color.
So, of course, you're the hat lady.
I am the hat lady.
You've got one or two back there.
I do. I think there's 42 now.
Oh,
Last time.
okay.
Yeah.
So, I guess start with what age you were and the circumstances and what you were thinking and go from there.
Well, I don't think I was thinking anything. Because here's what's odd to me. You know how, you talk to women and they'll talk about when they were little kids and they would play Barbies and they had their little easy bake ovens and stuff like that. And they always were like planning to grow up and get married and stuff like that. I can't ever recall ever thinking I was going to get married, ever planning a wedding, ever pretending I was a princess in a wedding dress. I never had a dream wedding fantasy. I, but at the same time, I can remember always wanting to have a lot of kids, you know? So, and I was promised to my boyfriend in high school, and we were, I guess semi-engaged. He was a year ahead of me. And then he joined the Marines, and I didn't want to go with him to California, and I didn't want to be a military wife, so I broke it off with him. And then in my senior year in school, I was there without a boyfriend, and I'd had a boyfriend for over 2 years on and off mostly. And so I met this man. I mean, he was a man, he was 6 years older than me, and I'm 17, so he's 23. And I met him through a citizen band radio club. There was a group in Garland of people that were on the CB radio. And I actually started a CB radio club in high school where the kids that in high school we'd get together once a week and just I don't know what the point of the club was. We would just hang out and talk to each other, and some were ham operators and some weren't. But anyway, I started dating this guy. And of course, he was so much older and he seemed so much more worldly to me, and my mom actually introduced me to him and then immediately told me not to date him. And I'm like, well, hello. But it was it was funny. He had a handle on the CB radio and it was named Giggles. And he
That's a
he
good
was
one.
he was hilarious. He made me laugh all the time. And he had a really funny laugh. And if he hadn't been so masculine, he would be feminine almost. Can you wrap your
Because
head
of
around
his laugh?
because of his laugh? And I mean, he was a big guy too, but he was like John Belushi, but he was like really light on his feet. And he was a black belt in Taekwondo, and so he was very agile and everything. And when he was younger, he had been really thin, and he had been in professional competitions for roller skating. Like it's like ice skating, but with roller balls, and was really good. And he was a great dancer, and he just always made me laugh. And so I enjoyed dating him, and we wound up getting engaged. And then I woke up one day and I'm like, I don't want to get married. And I think I talked about this in the previous episode that I broke up with him and we had a car wreck. And I did not remember breaking up with him until years later. And so what I've pieced together is that he wrecked us on purpose, I think. I'm not going to say that for sure because it was really cold. It was at Christmas time and it was really storming. So maybe he was just like having a conniption fit and lost control of the car. But we wound up, hitting a telephone pole
Uh-huh.
and I got a really bad concussion. And after that, I don't really have too much memory of the rest of my senior high school year,
Oh dear.
you know, and and I don't really remember much of anything except just little snippets until we actually got married. And I remember the marriage fairly well. It was a complete catastrophe. Com- The cake broke. The preacher wouldn't let me in the church. I because I was wearing shorts. It was all kinds of crap. And we spent our wedding night at a local hotel here, which was a big deal to me because I'd never been in a hotel except for school trips and stuff. So, we always were camped out on vacations. And I can remember calling my mom and telling her that we broke the bed. We did. We broke the bed, but we broke the bed because we were jumping on it. We were like kids,
Okay.
and the first year of our marriage, I don't know, it seemed I can't really remember much about it.
Where did you live?
We lived in Garland in an apartment here, and he was in business with his dad. They owned a business up in McKinney, so he drove to McKinney every day. And I was working my way up through the ranks at a home improvement store called Homer's Home Improvement. And I started out as a part-time cashier, and then I went into working in the departments, different departments, and became a department manager. And then I was like one of the youngest department managers they had. And then I wound up a couple of years later being one of the youngest and one of the few female store managers that they had. And I worked at different locations here and helped open up their last store before they went bankrupt and stuff. But um, I don't know. I don't remember much about the marriage other than he went to work, I went to work. We'd go to El Chico on Wednesday nights and have the enchilada dinner, which I loved. We'd go to the movies and we'd go to the drive-in movies. And I took karate with him and I got involved in karate. And I loved that and I was good at it. I was really good at it. Um, but it was like everything I did kind of revolved around him, you know, and until it didn't. And it stopped revolving around him. Um, he bought a truck when we were dating. After we wrecked that car, he bought a red Chevrolet truck and he had my name painted on the back in script, Deborah. And I started driving that truck even before we got married. And, everybody knew that truck when they saw it coming because it had my name on it. And I bought my first car when I was 16. I just went and bought a car. This is how independent I was. Was working. I saved up my money. I saw a car for sale. I could afford it. I stopped and looked at the engine. It was from a farmer outside of McKinney. I drove it and paid him cash and drove it home. It was my car, and it was a great car. It was a Fury 3. I mean, that thing could run. It was a great car. And so he drove my car and I drove his truck. Where was I going with this? But anyway,
I don't know.
oh, I know what it was. So he's driving my car, so there's this big huge trunk on the car, and I didn't ride in the car much. And I went out there to get something out of the trunk. I was looking for a tire jack for something. Something was stuck, or oh, I know what it was. A cat had crawled up in the engine of my truck, and it was cold. And I started the car, and I killed the cat, and I was trying to get the remains out of the motor and I was looking for a tire jack, the tire iron
Yeah.
to poke around in there and make sure of all the pieces. I was devastated. And I'm just sobbing. I'm just sobbing. I'm crying and I'm sobbing and I open up the trunk to get this tire iron and the trunk is completely packed with pornography, you know. And I don't mean just Playboy. I mean, there was Playboy, there was
Hustler.
Penthouse. Oh yeah, Hustler. I mean, you can't have pornography and not have Hustler for God's sake. You
So
know?
what was the explanation?
Well, I don't think I really gave him time to give me an explanation because I took all of the magazines and I threw them all over the apartment complex yard in front of her. I was a I had a really bad temper when I was younger. I was very reactionary when I was younger. Um, so I took all those magazines and I'm just like, and I'm strolling them everywhere. And then I threw a rock at the window. We lived in a studio apartment and he was still upstairs because he hadn't gone into work that day I guess because the roads were so icy and I was trying to get to work and I threw a rock up there and he looked out the window and I'm like, like here it is. And I got in my truck and I went to work. We never talked about it, never
What?
discussed. But I called his dad and I said, let me tell you what your son is doing at work because he's not doing it in my house. He's not doing it when I'm at home, and you need to make it stop. Now, I don't know what happened. I don't know what the discussion was. And you have to remember something. I'm 18 years old, okay? But I'm taking charge. I never saw another piece of pornography anywhere in our home property ever again, ever again. But was, I was furious. I
And I'm
was in
surprised you didn't say, what are you doing with all this and why?
because I didn't know why. It just wasn't going to happen. There was no, but what could he have possibly said that would have made a difference? Can you think of anything? I can't.
I confiscated it from the kids and I'm throwing it away.
Oh, really? Seriously? You know what? If I had asked him that and he'd given me an answer like that, I might have shot him. I might have just shot him. I'm not, I mean, I was that enraged. And if he had given me such a bullshit answer as that and treated me like I was stupid, I think that would have just sent me over the cliff. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so you never talked about it. So what happened next?
Well, I don't know. We just kind of plugged along in our lives, going to El Chico, going to the movies, going shopping. Um, you know, the thing that I really liked sharing with Stephen was the martial arts. And we spent a lot of time with the people in our class. And I like the fact that we would go and do a lot of diverse things like with different cultures. We'd go, back then, Dallas was not as diversified as it is now. But so to go and like find a Lebanese restaurant or an Indian restaurant or a little Indian market, I mean, sometimes you would drive for miles and not see anything. So we would go and search out places like that and we would try different cultural things and things of that. And the other thing is that he was a big music person. And I was thinking about this the other day. Four of my five husbands have all been big music buffs, you know, diverse in their tastes, knowledgeable and things like that. And we had a great stereo system and we would listen to music for hours. We'd sit and read and listen to music and stuff. So we had that in common. Um, but I guess I really started thinking about what marriage meant and what it meant to me and what I was not getting in the marriage is that our sex life went totally down the tubes after I found the pornography.
Why do you think that was?
I don't know. I never thought about it. Well, that's not true. That's just a lie. Someone needs to slap my face. That is an absolute lie. I always, it's not at the time, but since then, and since I was married to a gay man in the future from that, I've often wondered if he was not a latent homosexual. Is that the proper term still? And here's
Don't
why.
ask me.
So here's the things leading into that. So the night before we got married, his best man was his cousin. who lived up in the Sherman Denison area. And they had grown up together and spent a lot of time together. But ironically, the whole year that we were dating and engaged, I never met this man until just before our wedding, even though they were supposed to be really close. And he was gay. And so they spent the night before our wedding at gay bars. And
Well, okay.
at the time, I'm like, oh, that's kind of eclectic and cool. I like things that are neat and different. And I had a real good friend in high school who was a lesbian. So, that was not an issue for me, and I wasn't looking for any warning signs or anything like that. Um, but then this happened with the pornography, which then, it was all heterosexual pornography. So there was nothing to make me question that. But shortly after that, God, we need to I need a sign that says X-rated. This is an X-rated episode because he brought home personal massager with all these different attachments. And I thought, wow, we're gonna rev things up. This is cool. And he said to me in a very cold voice, he threw it on the bed. I said, what is this for? He goes, it's for you. I said, well, okay, that's kind of thoughtful. What are we going to do here? He goes, you need to start taking care of yourself. What? What do you mean taking care of myself? He goes, take care of yourself.
Does that mean he wasn't going to?
Yeah. Yeah. And our sex life pretty much dwindled down to almost nothing after that.
That's pretty young for that to happen.
You think?
Yeah,
So again, I don't know, I guess we were maybe 2.5 years into the marriage at this point. And so then I also at the time was raising hamsters. I bred little teddy bear hamsters and stuff. I just love those little darlings. And I had one out somewhere in this time frame that I don't know if it happened before all this or after. And it was crawling around on the bed, and I was playing with it. And he picked it up and he was nuzzling it. And he had a beard and everything. And the little teddy bears love nuzzling his beard and everything. But this one reached around and bit him on the ear, and he grabbed it and threw it against the wall and killed it. I left and I didn't come home for 2 days. I didn't know how to process that. Now, growing up in a house and in a family where there was a lot of physical aggression, I was able to process that in a way that I could normalize that in my head. You know what I'm saying?
hmm.
I didn't like it. It was horrific to me. But at the same time, I don't even think the word accept is right, but it was just used to stuff like that. Does that make sense? I'll give you an example of why I say that. I had a cousin that raised German Shepherd dogs that lived a block from us when we were kids living in Texarkana, and one of them got loose. And now my brothers are both 5 and 6 years younger than I am. So uh, I guess my brother was maybe 3 or 4 at the time, my older brother. And my dad worked the swing shift on the police department. And all of a sudden we could hear Kirk screaming, and my dad ran outside and there was a German Shepherd, and my dad immediately thought the German Shepherd was attacking him, but what he was doing, you know how dogs will hump people, as a sign of affection or a sign of dominance, and he was trying to hump Kirk, and Kirk's a kid, so the dog's as big as he is, and it terrified him. But without thinking about what he was seeing and processing it, my dad fired a gun and shot the dog and killed it. Okay, now the first thing that's crazy about that is, number one, he could have hit my brother, and nobody
Yes,
ever did that. Okay,
yes.
as a child, I'm like, oh my God, he could have killed my brother. But that was my first thought, and I'm like, why is
Hmm.
nobody else saying this? Okay, the second thing is that you're going to shoot the dog instead of going over there and grabbing it. I mean, that was considered normal with the way I grew up. It was, and then it's never talked about. It's never
Right.
talked.
Then it's like, well, it happened, we're done.
Yeah. Now my dad talked about it years and years later and about how horrible he felt about that and how my cousin was so nice and forgiving him for doing that. But I mean, this came years and years and years later. So anyway, so now I've got pornography on the table. I've got lack of physical intimacy on the table, and he has violently killed one of my pets, whether it was knee-jerk reaction or what, you know. So that's what I'm dealing with. And I think that this is about 2.5 years in with all of this accumulated. And I think I'm pretty much done at that point. But I don't know what that means yet. I don't know what am I going to do? I don't have a plan. I was really smart even as a young kid, but I was very naive and very unsophisticated and very unworldly about what real options were in this life because I had spent so much of my childhood trying to fit in. So here I am trying not to fit in, and what does that look like? You know what I'm
So you were
saying?
what, 21 at the time?
21, 22. So, by this time I'm in management. I make as much money as he does because he doesn't make that much money working for his dad. This has now become an issue in our marriage because, we're living okay for the time, but I don't see any big future here. He doesn't want to take over his dad's business. His dad is getting older. What their business was is they used acrylic sheets and they would vacuum form those into tables and countertops and sinks for mobile homes. And so you heat it up, you do a vacuum form of the shape, and then you would spray it with fiberglass so it would make it strong. Okay.
Mhm.
Mindless work, you know. And he had no ambition, he had no drive. Um, I couldn't see that he had any future plans for anything. We never talked about buying a house. We never talked about the future. We never talked about having children. And that's on him as much as it is me. So, I mean, we were both, obviously, we were not invested in this. We were comfortable um, in each other's company, but um, I just don't think there was much there. But every time when I finally decided I wanted a divorce and to move out and to end the marriage, every time I'd bring it up, he'd cry. And that would just kill me. Oh my God. He's crying again. I can't stand making people cry. What am I, so I'm like, okay, well, let's give it a little time and see if it gets better. And he would be a little bit more attentive but his idea of being more attentive was going to the Lone Star Drive-In over there off Grand Street and 30 and watching porno, you know, going to see a drive-in porno movie, and then wanting to have sex in the car, wanting to have sex when we got home. And that got to be when the only time we ever had sex is if we did that. And it just it just went from bad to worse.
Okay,
You got it?
I got it.
That's all I got to say about that. No.
Okay, Forrest.
Oh, it's Forrest Gump.
Wow, that's a
You catch
lot.
your breath?
So
Do you need to catch your breath a little bit?
it, that's a lot to be young and not have it just floors me that he would bring you toys to say, okay, take care of yourself. What why? Why? What's going on? Is what I'd have been asking.
Well, I don't know if he was pre-diabetic because he did become diabetic later in life. I don't know if he was pre-diabetic and was just having erection problems and just couldn't face that, or if he was homosexual. And I'm going to tell you why I say that again in a minute. And just I was just not his cup of tea, at that point. because it's been my experience that gay men can screw just about anything for a while, but and when the new wears off, then they're back to their old ways. Because I've dated a lot of gay men. I like gay men. Gay men are fun. They're interesting. Um, and but you can't sustain a relationship with a gay man if they're not heterosexual or bi. It just doesn't
Mhm.
work. So, but
Well, I'm
two
sorry, but by definition, that makes him bi. He's not going to be.
Well, he did go on to marry again, and he had two children, I believe. And it's ironically, we both named our sons Joshua. Isn't that interesting? And I was this was a couple years after we got divorced, and I was in the Richardson Square Mall walking down the hall with my roommate. I had a good friend that was my roommate who was male. We were not lovers or anything. We were just roommates. And we're walking down, and he goes, "Look, there's Stephen." I'm like, no. And he was with his wife, his new wife. And I'm like, just ignore him. Pretend you don't see him. And so here's John, my roommate. Here I am. Here's Stephen, and here's his wife, and we're going this way and they're coming this way. And about the time we got side by side, I felt this whoosh go by my head. The son of a bitch tried to hit me. And I just kept walking, just kept on trucking. So I guess he was pretty pissed about the divorce. He used to stalk me after we separated. He took a job with a retail company because his dad was not doing well with his business, and I had nagged him to death to get a better paying job. And I told him, I said, well, if you'll take this job, move to Colleen, I'll meet you in Colleen. Well, that was the only way I got my divorce, is I didn't move to Colleen. And it's the only time I have consciously lied to someone that I can recall. But I mean, every time I would bring up divorce, he would just bawl and I couldn't take it. It was
Mhm.
heartbreaking. So I got him moved to Colleen and everything, and I didn't move and I didn't quit my job. And so what I found out during the course of our divorce and after, he would come to town on the weekends and follow me to see what the hell I was doing. He would stalk me. And, when he moved out, man, I went nuts. I'm going to the bars, I'm dating, you know. Sometimes I'd have two dates in one night. you know, I was bar hopping, and he's following me the whole time. So we have that. So I guess that just made him madder and madder and madder. And why he would not want to get a divorce is beyond me. I don't know why he fought the divorce. He fought it so hard. And I don't know why, because I couldn't see that he was getting anything more out of the marriage than I was. And I knew I was dying. So I don't understand why he objected to it so much. But the other thing is that I found out, I guess, 10 or 12 years ago that he was murdered.
Oh God.
And he was living in San Antonio, and he let a male friend into his apartment. And I guess they were doing drugs or something based on the things I've seen on the internet and newspapers and stuff. And this guy, I think, was like just stoned out of his mind, and he stabbed him like 27 times. And then he starts running through the streets of San Antonio, and he'd run into like a gas station going, I killed my best friend. And before the police could get there, he'd run to another location, and it took him several hours before they ever caught up with him and arrested him. But he murdered him. He stabbed him to death. And I've often wondered, either that was a drug-induced situation or maybe it was a lover's situation that went bad. I don't know. I'm just making
And
this up. And
you won't know.
no, no, I won't know. It doesn't really matter. But I thought, my God, what a terrible way to end. And
Yeah, it's a tragedy.
he had such a boring life, and then to have such a melodramatic death. I mean, good God. I mean, that's a little ironic when you think about it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, um, you're talking about the 70s, right?
Yes.
Like
We got
late
married.
70s.
Yes, we got married in 76 and divorced in 80, I think, or 81, something like that.
And so a lot of gay relationships were still not open. There was no,
Oh no, no. There was no gay payee here in Texas at the time. It
right.
was, you know, uh I don't know, something there was something really dark that happened this marriage. Do I need to tell that? Should I tell it? Do I talk about it?
Is it totally X-rated or,
No, but it's horrific.
well,
It's
you're telling.
horrific. Well, when it became apparent to him that I had my mind made up to get a divorce, I was working a lot of nights with my job, and he started drinking. We were not big drinkers. We'd have a margarita sometime or something like that, but we were not big drinkers. And and I talk about drinking all the time on Facebook. I'm not a big drinker. But I came home one night and his best friend from high school was at the apartment with him and they'd been drinking. And he started a fight with me, going, "Where you been?" And I'm like, "Well, it's 10 o'clock. The store closed at 9. We had people that we had to get checked out and they wouldn't leave the store. I have to walk the store. I have to lock it. It's a 20-minute drive, the best. I don't even know why you're asking me that question. You're just a fucking ass tonight." It's kind of what I said. And he backhanded me, knocked me down, and then proceeded to drag me to the bedroom and raped me. And his friend came in and watched.
Great,
Yeah. Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have ended it for me right there.
Oh, you think? Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If I had any doubts at all, but by that time I'd already made up my mind. You know, this was just the bullet that killed the cow.
Well, a lot of men, I shouldn't say a lot, but there are some men that feel like because they're married to you, your answer is always yes, right? It can't be right.
Well, when you consider the fact that we weren't having sex very often, that was a total power play, you
Hmm.
know. So this is my twisted little brain. I have to I have to own this if I'm going to tell the story. I couldn't fight him. He was stronger than me. He was bigger than me. He was a black belt in karate. I was only a red belt at the time. So I couldn't outfight him. So I just accepted what was happening because I figured he wasn't going to hurt me any more than he already had. And then when he got up, he goes, "Well, what do you think about that?" And I said, "Well, I think you're a fucking rude host." I said, "You didn't ask your friend to join." And I said, "David, don't you want to join us?" I mean, I got a dark streak in me. I do. And lo and behold, David goes, "Yeah."
No,
And so David came to our bed and he couldn't handle it. He left and he was gone for 3 days. And his friend David stayed with me the entire 3 days until he came back. And he told him, he goes, "Don't you hurt her again." I mean, it was just bizarre. It's just bizarre thinking back now.
that was something to deal with. So how did you deal with David being there?
I don't know. It was weird.
What did he say? I'm not leaving till your husband comes home?
Yeah. He goes, "I want to make sure you're okay." He stayed and took care of me. He bathed me afterward. He fed me. He cooked for me. He cuddled me.
Whoa.
I mean, I I think it was really the first time I've ever felt nurtured as an adult. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I never saw him again after that either.
Did he part ways with Stephen?
I don't know. I don't know. I never saw him again. I never talked to him again.
Wow. Well, he was kind of being the better person, wasn't he?
I don't know. Was he? I
Was
wonder.
he? Did he
Was
feel
it guilt?
guilty?
Yeah, was it guilt? Was it because he did partake. He did partake of the drink. You know what I mean?
So maybe it was guilt.
Um, I don't know. I know I almost, looking back, I have no emotion attached to any of that. So I know I was in a state of shock because I have no emotion. Even now, I, I'm like, why, why wasn't I enraged? Why didn't I shoot somebody? Why didn't I leave? But I was in a total state of shock. And to this day, understanding human nature the way I do, having taken all the psychology courses and crap that I have, and working with human nature and as an investigator and as a coach, to this day, I cannot explain my reaction to that as far as inviting David into our bed. I,
You were trying to goad Stephen. That's what you were doing.
I think I was trying to tell him that he couldn't touch me, that he was trying to hurt me and he didn't hurt me. And that's the closest explanation I can give to that, is that you tried to break me, but fuck you, I'm not broken,
Hmm.
you know, and I'm still in control of myself. You didn't take away my power. That's the closest thing I can come to as an explanation. You weren't expecting that, were you?
I was not.
I had never told you that story, had I?
No, you did not. And I think that that would be emotionally changing. Uh, I can see why you moved into Colleen now, or Colleen. What was it?
He moved to Colleen, Killeen,
Colleen.
Colleen. I'm
Colleen.
Colleen, and he moved to Colleen.
Colleen.
I
Wow.
can't tell you how strong that made me, though. It made me very strong. I was always strong because of the things I dealt with as a child and stuff, but it didn't take away my vulnerability, but it put it really, if I was going to give it a visual, I took my vulnerability and I put it deep inside of me, and I wrapped it up and coated it, and I was very careful who I let get close to that,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, that would have been my next thing. So, so you decided to go nuts after you got rid of him and do your own
I
thing.
don't think I went nuts. I think I just had a good time. I had a good time. I got to experience things that most people probably do during college. And since I didn't go to college, that was kind of my college years, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I dated a lot, and I was engaged to 3 guys at one time, and that got real difficult. I got I got screwed up one night and I wore the wrong ring, and I finally said screw it, because yeah, I didn't want to be engaged, but men God, they just want to own you. They want to put a ring on your finger just so that's mine, that's mine. So I would just say sure, just to shut them up, because I was enjoying dating them. And so I
I
just
never
finally
had
said,
that experience.
well, it's not all it's cracked up to be. It was fun, but it was stupid. I gave them all their rings back. I did the decent thing. And two of them, we still dated for a while. I guess I was fun too.
Yeah, yeah. So how many years between finally getting rid of Mr. Fun and having fun of your own did you find somebody else?
Um, 4 or 5. And in that time, I dated, I had a child while I was single. And it was never my intention to ever marry again. I didn't see
Mm,
the benefit of that. And then I met men that truly loved me. They may have had their problems or issues or whatever, or mental illness, but they truly love me. And so because of that, and that your son needs a father, and my family pressured me about that as well. And so it, I always thought I should try to live a normal life, and I just don't think I'm cut out for a normal life. I don't. I mean, I live really the closest to a normal life that I will ever get to probably now. And a lot of that's because I am very devoted to giving my grandchildren good life lessons. And I'm very devoted to family. I am. I now have family. I have children and grandchildren. And, I have a mother
So
that lives with me.
if you were giving advice to your granddaughter, and would you give this story to her? Would you tell her the circumstances? Would you
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
you
I
know,
would. But
maybe
it
not
would,
now, but as she gets older?
no, no, when she gets older, if I saw a time in her life when it was appropriate, because you have to remember something. My granddaughter's been through a very unusual life herself. Her
Yes,
mother
yeah.
abandoned her and left her with my son. My son adopted her. Then her mother died, and she's had a lot of difficulties, other things that have happened in her life that I won't talk about because that's her story, not
Right.
mine.
But I guess, you know, I never heard stories like that before. And
Me either.
so
I wish somebody
marriages
had told me stories like that.
marriages were always perfect, right?
Well, not for me because of the divorce. I think I was trying to have the perfect marriage
Hmm.
because what I didn't have in my life growing up. My grandparents stayed married, but my parents didn't. And there were a lot of aunts and uncles that were divorced, but there were a lot of aunts and uncles that weren't divorced. So I was trying to I don't think normal's not the word. I was trying to have peace. I was trying to have happiness, contentment, companionship, family. I think that's what okay. So if I'm going to just be completely open. I think I married my first husband because of his family. Because his family, he had two brothers, and one brother lived in Houston, but the older brother lived here. Every Sunday, the family got together. So him, his parents, his brother's wife, and their two kids got together every Sunday and they watched the ball game or whatever. And then they would order Sonic hamburgers for everybody, and everybody sit around and have hamburgers. They complain about the price of the hamburgers for a group that large, and then everybody go home, you know.
Yeah.
And on one hand, that whole scenario bored the hell out of me. But on the other hand, it was kind of comforting,
Hmm. A
you
sense
know.
of belonging.
Well, a sense of stability. I think stability is the better word, not belonging. Because I don't think I ever truly felt like I belonged.
Mm.
And that was a really apparent to me. One Thanksgiving, they got tickets to go to the Cowboy game. And you know how I feel about football. I hate football. I think football and all professional sports is a horrible vice in this country. It promotes gambling and drug use and prostitution, and it's way out of control. And people idolize all the wrong things, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And so anyway, his dad bought tickets for all of us to go to the Cowboy game. And I'm like, I don't want to go. But I had to go, and it was cold and it was dreary, and they were playing Houston. And so we're not on the 50-yard line, but we're real close to it on the Dallas side. Okay. So what does Deborah do? Deborah goes to the bathroom and she buys a banner for Houston.
No, she didn't.
I'm
Ah,
I'm ornery. I'm ornery. And I know how to aggravate people. It's a talent. It is a true talent. So I have my Houston banner, and his family is not real thrilled with me, but they were all very quiet. They never argued. They never said anything. They would, they just kept their bitchiness to themselves, or they would bitch to the wrong person. So nobody's saying anything to me, and I'm real rhying for Houston, and I come up with a stupid cheer. Kick him in the head, kick him in the shin. If they come back, we'll do it again. Yay, Houston. And this guy sitting behind me is going, sit down and shut the fuck up. I said, fuck you. And he threw a beer on me. And so my husband, Stephen, turns around and pops him in the jaw. So here we go.
Here we go.
And I don't remember what happened after that. I think we went home, but I don't remember. That's one of my little blackouts. I remember the ticket. I remember not wanting to go. I remember buying a banner, and everything else has been kind of filled in for me by other
Well,
people.
regardless of the banner, at least your husband, stood up for you.
No, he just liked to fight. I only remember one time he liked to argue and he liked conflict, which was totally opposed to the rest of the family. Okay. But I remember the only time I remember being proud of him um is we were in because he had a lot of road rage when we'd go places, and we're going to Six Flags, and we're at that curve coming through downtown, where you're going to come off of 35 onto 30 going out toward Arlington, and this guy's cutting him off. And so he runs around and he cuts this guy off. And so we have, demolition derby going on. And Stephen's yelling at the guy, pull over, pull over, pull over. And I'm like, oh God, we're going to jail. Or he's going to jail because I'm not getting out of the car. And so this guy and him are yelling back and forth, and the guy pulls over. And Stephen pulls in behind him and waits for the guy to get out. And then he pulls around him and takes off and just starts laughing. And he had that hilarious laugh, that giggle that he had. And I know a lot of people say, well, that was a chicken shit thing to do, but I was proud of him because he took a situation that could have been really volatile and really horrible, and he made it his own. There was no violence involved, and
And he still got his point.
he got his point across. And it's kind of sad though that that's the only time I remember being proud of it. But it is that I can remember, that I can remember. You have to add that codicil, that I can remember. Why am I doing this? Jesus.
Is it too difficult?
It it's not difficult. It just it amazes me how crazy it sounds sometimes.
Well, you cannot have control over the other person. You can only have control over your responses.
Well, I don't think I had a lot of control over my responses in many, 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 many instances. I was emotionally volatile. And in fact, when the children were having their mental health issues and stuff, one of the things I had done was I got myself tested. And I did not test positive for bipolar. They did the brain scan and the map and all this stuff, but I have really high alpha waves. And so the doctor says, well, there is a name for this. And I'm like, what is it? He goes, terminal happiness. He goes, no matter what's going on with you, there's always this kind of euphoric feeling in the background a little bit. And he's right. I mean,
Pollyanna?
that's no, not Pollyanna. It's just that I can see the humor in dark stuff.
Oh,
I can see the humor, and my humor is what has gotten me through so many horrible, horrible things. Is my humor, my ability to see. I'm like a walking Saturday Night Live skit sometimes. And I used to get in trouble all the time for inappropriate laughter and inappropriate jokes in school. And, I got in trouble all the time for saying things that were totally inappropriate. And, you know, but I said things that a lot of people thought they just didn't have the guts to say.
yeah. And I don't, I had some inappropriate responses when people would die after I lost my parents because I was so emotional about the loss. Then I would say stupid stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of times you just pop off and say things, and you don't even there's no power behind it. It's just a joke. It's a
Yeah.
comedic way of looking at things, and like, Scott, my husband now, is always saying, you should be a comedian. You should do stand-up comedy. I can't imagine doing that, but I'm a great heckler. Take me to a comedy show and I can heckle the hell out of them. Yeah.
Oh,
But
dear.
I do it in a good way. I make them look good because that we can feed off of each other. And there's a local comic here that we've gone to some of his shows. And he goes, I love it when you show up. You make me better. You know?
He has to be on his toes.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I'm not speechless often, but today I
I know
was.
I can tell. I feel like I'm kind of holding your hand through this one.
Because I like, what happened? What did you say?
Well, and I tell you what's interesting is that to say all of this in a short period of time is kind of shocking to me when you're like, oh my God, oh, that's terrible. I mean, he was not a horrible human being all the time. I don't want people to think that, but there's a lot of horrible things that happened. But he did make me laugh. And ironically, I have a bunch, you can't see them on the screen now, but I have a huge vinyl collection that I've reestablished. I used to own like 500 records. You know why? Because he got me into that. And some of my favorite songs, some of my favorite albums is all music that he introduced me to. And I don't associate it with him. Which is really kind of interesting. I
Yeah,
just fell in love with the music and I love it still. So to me, that means that I don't hold any animosity or anger with him, or I wouldn't be able to enjoy that music like that, you know? And um, I don't know, he never denied me anything except sex.
well, he got you a toy. What do you want?
With attachments. Uh, and there was a selection. So, I mean, like, it was really interesting because being married to him helped me to establish my identity and helped me to establish my independence because I managed our money. I managed my money. I managed his money. I allocated our budgets. I made the decisions about things on what we were doing and when we would do them. Um, so I felt like I really grew and I grew very quickly in my level of confidence and authority, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He did not bully me for most of the marriage. It was only in that last 6 months that we lived together when and really it was just that one instance, that one horrible, horrible instance where he was really, you know, over the top with me. You know what I'm saying? He didn't speak unkindly to me very often. We didn't argue very often. I mean, we were great. We should have been roommates. We should have been friends and roommates. That's what it should have been. So I had a great roommate after he left, though. That was a gay guy named David. And David was great. He took such good care of me. He was a hairdresser, so he always did my hair. We always went out together. And one night we'd go to gay bars and one night we'd go to straight bars. We'd go back and forth. So that way we both got what we wanted. And he always did my hair. He always did my makeup. He always cooked for me. He always did my laundry. He would even put toothpaste on my toothbrush in the morning.
Oh my God, you're so spoiled.
I mean, I went from one extreme to the other. I mean, it was awesome. I didn't get any sex there either, though.
Well,
Now, here's what I did for David, though. David would go on a drinking binge once a month. And the rule is that if he got caught and he went to jail for public intox, which he did quite often, I would go and get him out of jail. So I did.
wow. Okay, well, I don't know if I can survive another marriage
Oh
because
my
I know
God.
I know this next one is going to be Interesting.
Hard. The next one's going to be hard. The next one, just to give y'all an idea, is was an on again, off again relationship the whole time I was single, and we wound up getting married, and he died a year within the marriage, and I was widowed at the age of 25, 26, something like that. So that'll be a tough one.
Yeah.
So all right, are we done?
I think so. I think as soon as I recover from all this information,
Do I need to send some oxygen over for you or what?
maybe.
Now, I just want you to put this in perspective. You're just hearing about it. I lived it.
Yes. Yes. I would have been, I don't know. I think I would have been a little, no, I wouldn't. Not at that age. No.
You wouldn't have been what?
I would have done the same thing. I wouldn't have fought because there was no use in fighting. And I'm not sure I would have invited his friend to our bed, but
I don't know. I think my mind would have broken if I hadn't have done that. I had to take some power back. I had to have some control back because,
so he was shocked that the friend did, and he left.
I've wondered about that. I don't know if that was the problem for him or if he was appalled at what he had done
Yeah.
or if it was both. I don't know. I didn't know how to ask all the right questions back then.
That shocks me too.
Well, I wasn't born knowing all the things that I know.
You weren't born learning how to ask the right questions, huh?
Well, that and to be honest, frankly, I just didn't give a shit at that point. You know, I just didn't give a shit. I was too busy in figuring myself out to want to spend time trying to figure him out,
Yeah, I get that.
you know?
Which is why you shouldn't get married so young, I think.
No, I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think with the right partner, it's a wonderful experience because you can grow together. And that was the problem. We were not growing, and we were as a couple, and we were not growing together and supporting each other in our growth. Like I said, we were just living parallel lives. That was the
Right,
problem.
right.
Okay. So, all right, close this.
Close us. Thanks for sharing your stories with us, Deborah Colleen.
Rose. And that is my
And
maiden name. Just so you know, Rose is my maiden name. I didn't change my name legally when I got married.
you've always been Rose.
Well, I went by Wolf, and my first husband's last name was Wolf, and I did go by Wolf because that's how they listed me at work and stuff, but I never changed it on my social security or anything like that. So
Okay.
I never changed it legally. If I was going to have another name, I wouldn't mind having Wolf. And I think it's interesting that I've always had an affinity for wolves. I had an experience with a wolf when I was a little girl in the wild, and wolf is one of my totem animals. So that's kind of an interesting correlation there we could talk about sometime. So
So next time, whenever that is, we get together, we're going to go
stay
to marriage
tuned.
number 2.
Stay tuned.
So stay tuned. What comes next?
Marriage. What, you want to talk about my single years or you want to talk about my second marriage?
Well, I don't, it doesn't matter. You want to talk about the years in between the first marriage and the second marriage?
We can. Now that's going to tell you that's a difficult period, memory wise, because it kind of all runs together. And it's because I had so much activity going on.
Hey, I don't remember those years either. I spent a lot of it intoxicated.
Well, and so I forgot what I was going to say. Never mind.
Okay. All
So
right. So stay tuned for the next episode. And
All
thank you,
right.
Deborah, for sharing things with us. And
Thank you
I,
for listening.
okay, bye now.
All right. Bye.